Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Bertrand. I'm the Director of Visualizations for Clemson University Center for Workforce Development. And I'm happy to introduce Mark Gill from St. Cloud State University up in Minnesota. I first met Mark about a year ago when we worked on a project for building underwater remotely operated vehicles. And that turned out very nicely. And he has a lot of experience in social VR, which we haven't really done too much in the past, but it would be an interesting direction for us to head into. And Mark has been working in computer graphics, virtual reality, and software development for 25 years. He's currently the Director of Visualization Lab at St. Cloud State University, and he's the undisputed winner of the Best Job on Campus Award for 5 years running. So I'm interested to hear about what that entails. And his position allows him to advocate and evangelize for all manners of emergent technology. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to write your questions or comments in the QA section in Zoom. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Mark.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much. Yeah, as Jeff was saying, I run the visualization lab at St. Cloud State University, and our primary mission is student engagement by providing access to real-world projects, real-world software development, and those sorts of opportunities they're not going to get as part of a regular curriculum. We're also a cross-disciplinary effort, so we work with every department on campus. We take student workers from every program on campus, and we work with other universities, institutions, both within the university system and outside. So we really try to go in as many different directions as possible. And what I'm going to be talking about today is the current state of virtual reality and extended reality from an educational standpoint, where we are now, why is it so messy and challenging for a lot of people, and then what's maybe like the next 5 or 10 years going to look like. You know, get into a little speculation. Let me go ahead and share my screen. You should have told me to do that sooner. There we go. How's that working?
That looks good.
Okay. So the resources that I'm using for the information that I'm getting for this presentation come from a variety of different places, but two of the larger sources are the Educators in VR, which is a community of educators who are interested in either using VR or developing in virtual reality for educational purposes. They're a vibrant and active and very informative community that covers the entire spectrum of technical expertise. So you've got everybody from beginners to seasoned veterans that are available in this. And it's an invaluable resource, both to get involved and to find out information about virtual reality in education. And then the other is the Immersive Learning and Research Network, which is a global organization of immersive learning researchers, as the name implies. People such as ourselves who are interested in the immersive aspect of extended reality and how it applies to education. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the growth of the market in virtual reality for the educational market. There's a lot of different estimates, and a lot of it depends on how they're defining their metrics. But the virtual reality market in the United States in 2020 was almost an $8 billion industry. And it's experienced about a 40% growth rate since about 2018, and most analysts are expecting that to continue through 2025 and beyond. So we could be looking at in the United States, a $25 billion, $75 billion industry within the next decade. So it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger. Now, naturally, over the past couple of years, the pandemic has had a big impact on pretty much everything. So it's closed a lot of labs, such as ours, that we've used to focus on multi-user experiences and group experiences with all in one place, sharing equipment, sharing the experience, and collaborating in a face-to-face environment. And that use case has just we've just had to put it aside. And we're certainly not the only ones that find ourselves in that position. Supply problems have made getting the hardware more difficult, and at the same time, the lockdowns and the lack of social interaction has led to an increase in demand for many types of virtual reality hardware, largely to accommodate for social virtual reality. Now, currently, the education market is one of the smallest markets in the virtual reality market, but advances in training techniques and the sort of the intersection between the education and the business sectors are really expected to drive the size of the educational virtual reality market over the next couple of years. You can look at examples in recent times, Walmart buying thousands and thousands of virtual reality headsets to do their work or training with. Microsoft investing heavily in the HoloLens 2 device and its integration with training packages such as Dynamic 365, making it easier and easier for educators to create training content for the business applications. And that's what they see as being a big driver in the educational market for extended reality for the next few years. Also, K through 12 adoption is going up faster than it is for higher education. And we're expecting that students who are graduating from schools that are adopting XR are going to be expecting that when they get into higher education settings. So that also is expecting to drive the demand of the next few years for extended reality experiences, especially in the higher education market. Social virtual reality is something that we've come to lean heavily on as a result of the pandemic. And in fact, it's something that I sort of fell backwards into at the very beginning of the pandemic by attending a conference that was held entirely in social virtual reality. It's very useful for replacing canceled events. So we started off at the beginning of the pandemic by holding a graduation ceremony for the College of Science and Engineering here in AltSpace VR. We've had academic resource fairs. We've had student research colloquiums. We've had job fairs, a variety of different events that would have been canceled or would have been held in a severely restricted environment. We've been able to hold those sorts of events in social virtual reality. Social VR also gives us really good event support. So we can stand up these events and we can moderate these events, and we maintain a level of control over these events that we really just don't have in a face-to-face event. It's getting to the point where it's not just replacing events that have been canceled out from under us, but we're able to provide experiences and provide events that weren't possible in a traditional setting before that. And the advances in the social virtual reality platforms, and there are many social virtual reality platforms, but if you've got a tracked VR set, then the body language that you get from talking to another avatar in these settings is almost instantly believable. It's very convincing. So you get that same sort of social interaction from going to one of these events that you would get from actually talking to a person, but there's no travel costs. You don't have to get a hotel. You don't have to worry about spreading diseases. It's really great. I mean, I love going to an event in something like AltSpace because it's all the best parts about going to a conference without the going to the conference part. It's a beautiful thing if you don't like to if you don't like to travel. And then some of these social virtual reality platforms are experimenting with taking your actual physical features of and taking photos of you and translating that into a realistic avatar. I'm not a big fan of that. It's very deep in the uncanny valley, if you know that reference. They try hard to make them look appealing, but that still needs a lot of work. Now, AltSpace VR in particular, which is what we've been leaning on, we like it because it's free to use, it's free to put up an event, it's free to access, and it's available on a wide variety of different platforms, VR headsets, and there's a 2D client, so that if we have somebody who doesn't have a headset or can't wear a headset or refuses to wear a headset, they can still engage in the activity by using a 2D desktop client that has a variety of different functions. AltSpace has, not only have we been using it to replace events, we've started to design a curriculum around AltSpace, in that we've had classes where the entire class has been held in AltSpace. Some of our instructors have used the features that are in AltSpace to record lectures for their classes, whether or not they actually held the class in AltSpace. And then the students that work for us in the lab, we've been employing them to develop these world spaces, to develop events, to develop experiences that you can have in these events, and then to act as moderators and facilitators and tech supports for the event itself. Just like a real world event, you need staff to handle things that come up, to greet people when they come in the door, to answer questions. All of those sorts of logistical issues that you would have with a real face-to-face event, you're probably going to encounter with a social VR event as well. And the solutions a lot of times are the same. It just involves getting somebody to stand there and do that, or answer that question or push that button. AltSpace also has a very supportive community. So there's a variety of different ways that you can engage with their community. And that's been very helpful in us coming up to speed with how do we build these worlds, how do we manage these events, engaging with people that have been here for a while and are helpful and informative has really helped us out a lot to establish our presence in AltSpace. And then AltSpace now supports really huge events. Audience sizes was a concern, say, a year ago, when we couldn't get any more than 50 or 60 people into a single AltSpace event. And now they have mechanisms to manage an event so that we could have hundreds, well over 1,000 people in a single AltSpace event. Something else that we've done in AltSpace, and this was Jeff was mentioning this at the beginning of the program, through the National Center for Autonomous Technologies, we supported the MATE, which is the Marine Autonomous Technology Education Center, and every year they have a world submersible ROV competition. So teams of students from around the world will design their ROV and build their ROV and then put it in a pool and have it go through some tasks. And past that, it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse to describe exactly what they're doing, although that's going to have to change. They have regional competitions all summer long, and we provided worlds for them to engage in these events. So audience members that normally would be able to go to see the event, they could come into AltSpace without having to worry about any kind of travel restrictions or safety concerns. We built several of these worlds that we could link together, and we could change them out based on different events that were going on throughout the year. Also leveraging our students to design these events and support these events as well. And one of the things that we used a lot was the Welcome Center. So the Welcome Center is a persistent world that's still there. It's still in AltSpace, and people still go to it. And it's sort of a self-guided tour through the story of MATE and the ROV competition. And what's that all about? When is it held? And who are the sponsors? It's sort of like a expo center as well. So we've had a variety of different sorts of events in the Welcome Center, reconfiguring it and replacing certain things at different times. And then this coming up year, we plan on expanding these events, providing more audience interaction. We've got some designs for some games that we can put into here that allow the VR audience the ability to pilot one of these ROVs themselves. So that's on the development for this coming up year, is the next round of the NCAT MATE ROV World Competition VR experience. Now, the Immersive Learning Research Network, they produce a report every year detailing the state of educational extended reality opportunities. So one of the things that they've mentioned is this list of strong points that virtual reality can bring to an educational program. Virtual reality allows for increased empathy, and it has a wide variety of creative tools. So it allows people to express themselves and create new content and design things in ways that might not be possible through traditional design mechanisms. The collaboration across different disciplines that can take place in a social virtual reality or in a VR environment pushes new boundaries, new directions for educational opportunities. And one of the things that they've really found is that it's not exclusively STEM. We've had this almost a preconception that virtual reality is a STEM field and STEM fields would benefit the best from it. But we're seeing a lot of applications and a lot of content be created lately that lend themselves to a more liberal arts sort of educational program. They also detail a list of barriers that people who are in education and interested in virtual reality, extended reality, barriers that they may encounter trying to get established within their own program. Accessibility is a big one, right? So accessibility actually covers a lot of different things in the scope of this report. It's not just how well can I wear a headset, or do I have any sort of physical limitation that is going to keep me from wearing a headset? Am I going to be able to buy a headset? Which headset should I buy? All of those things come into making it difficult to access a virtual reality experience. There's a lot to it, and the expense can be quite daunting at first. Teachers tend to not know a whole lot right now about how to implement extended reality, and the number of people who are interested and willing to share what they know is limited throughout the educational spectrum. So we have not many faculty members who know enough about extended reality to get their administration interested in it enough to support it. And without the administration support, you're not going to get a lot of interest through the remaining faculty who may not even be aware that it's possible. And this sort of administrative uncertainty cycle is something that holds back a lot of programs that might be interested in starting something in extended reality from ever being able to do so. Also, all of these different platforms, all of these different devices, they don't necessarily talk to each other. Some of these applications only work on exclusive headsets or in exclusive environments. So you could easily find yourself in a situation where, well, I like this application, but I also like this other application over here, but to use them both, I'm going to have to buy 2 headsets. And that's just not a pleasant situation to be in. A lot of these things come with their hidden costs too. You can't just buy a bunch of headsets and then expect to stand up a VR lab and expect it to survive for long, unless you have some sort of support from staff or you have some sort of facilities support. A lot of institutions, this is falling back on their IT personnel. So you have an extra demand on your IT people to maybe pick up new technologies and support new devices. And a lot of this turns into just time that faculty and staff have to spend coming up to speed on these things that you may not anticipate when you're thinking about getting into VR. And then, you know, there's just a stigma to it. This was an anonymous comment from one of our surveys that we did a while back. And I guess I still reference it. So apparently it stuck with me for a while. But it does sometimes just smell like nerd. There's I don't know, there's a a stigma to it, to some of it. And, you know, that runs through a segment of the population. And if you look at how technology spreads through a population, that's really to be expected. You're going to have groups of people that could be broken up by, you know, whether they're early adopters or they're part of the early majority or the late majority, or whether they're total Luddites and they're going to wait till they're forced to use the technology. Depending on where a person is on that spectrum, they may look at negatively at somebody who's farther down the spectrum than themselves. That's just something that we see a lot, and it's virtual reality, extended reality, all these different technologies. They're still to a point where that is that's a thing. That's a consideration. That's something that you're going to encounter. Now, getting around these barriers. How do we navigate around this, and how do we establish something? Well, first of all, it takes a champion. It takes somebody who is willing to invest the personal time to come up to speed with the technology, write some grants, find some funding, do whatever it takes to make something happen. But until you get at least one person, and that person can come from the faculty side or can come from the admin side, until you get that person that's willing to make that investment, then you're going to have an issue getting anything going. You want to make sure that what you're trying to do isn't too big for what you can support. There's all sorts of different scales. The barrier to entry from a personal financial point of view has never been lower to get into extended reality than it is today. But there's all sorts of different scales. You could easily spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars building a nice Cadillac system. But you need to make sure that that's really what you need. That's what you can support. Also, these things don't last forever, right? So every device hopefully has about a 3 to 4 year life cycle. So you want to keep an eye on the hardware market and maybe wait, depending on where we are in that cycle. Every year, people ask me, you know, what headset should I buy? What headset should I buy? And depending on what time of year it is, I either have an answer for them or I tell them to wait 6 months because there's always something new coming out. Now, this has sort of slowed down since the pandemic. We didn't really have any new hardware releases come out this year, which a lot of people, myself included, think is really a good thing. It's inspiring developers to get more horsepower out of the existing hardware instead of just, well, you know, when the new headset comes out, we'll just write for that one and everything will be great. Right now, we've got these older headsets that, well, older, they're only like a year or two old, but still in the scope of the way these things turn over, they have been around for a while. So we're seeing new updates for the hardware, new updates for the processors on those that are squeezing more horsepower, more processing power out of the current headsets. So that's really a good thing. That's really a good thing. But the two things that any particular person can do is focus on content creation. When you're developing material for your classes, if you're interested in getting XR into your classroom, try to find ways where you can make the content you're going to be presenting, because this content that you can create can add to the larger body of content. And that's one of the things that is really holding extended reality back, is the lack of content. The hardware is progressing very nicely so far, but it's the content that's available and content that's suitable for an educational use has been lacking behind. And then try to increase awareness in your other faculty members is something that we can do to move this along and get around these barriers to adoption. And then, as I was saying, pick your right scale. It doesn't have to be massive. XR, it can be as simple as like a film strip, something that I expose my class to once or twice a semester, just to get my feet wet, just to get the interest going. And as these things become more and more prevalent, the demand is going to increase. Probably no more true than today, you know, even before the pandemic, face herpes was a thing. So you got to plan to safely share your equipment. You've got to You've got to come up with a well-founded cleaning and maintenance program if you're sharing your headsets. One use case I was reading of from a university in Australia, they actually have a 3-tier cleaning system. They clean the headsets after each use, and then they clean the headsets again at the end of each day, and then every week the entire lab is cleaned. As well as other things like paper face shields. Another alternative to that is to make sure that, just get everybody that's going to be using a headset, just get everybody a headset. Funding available, that's been the approach that we've tried to take, especially for student developers working in the Viz Lab. We just write into the budget for whatever the project is that we're going to buy a headset for every student that's working on it, and that's going to be their headset for the remainder of the semester. And I would also consider going into augmented reality. I know I've been doing a lot of talking about virtual reality because that's really sort of been the focus of the lab for the past few years. But augmented reality, which is still under that umbrella of extended reality, augmented reality is still a very viable option for getting this sort of technology into the hands of your students, especially since about 5 years ago, every smartphone is able to run augmented reality apps. It's so prevalent, and it's so well defined that it's definitely something to consider if you're thinking about, getting some sort of disruptive technology into your classrooms. So shifting gears a little bit, and this has been a topic of discussion for quite the past couple of weeks. The company formerly known as Facebook, changing its name to Meta, announced that they were going to be developing the metaverse. And if you've read any science fiction in the past 30 years or watched any science fiction movies in the past 30 years, you've probably heard the term metaverse. The way that Meta is designing the Facebook or designing the metaverse, it's going to be a platform that encompasses all of your computational needs, whether that's business, personal, education, gaming, finance, socially interactive, all of that stuff. And for some reason, plenty of sweet baby rays. This is a frame out of after Mark Zuckerberg's keynote speech. And for some reason, there's a bottle of sweet baby rays all over the place. Nobody's been able to figure that one out. But this model, this notion, this thing that they're putting out, that they're saying is going to replace the internet. It's going to be the next internet. It's everybody's going to do it. It's going to be great, and they're going to build it, and they're going to provide it. And I think that's really presumptuous. I think it's presumptuous that they're thinking that they're going to do it all and everybody's going to go through them. I think it's presumptuous that they change their name to Meta as if they're going to be all encompassing. And as a professional developer, I was almost offended by this. I was almost offended by this, and especially since a lot of the things that they talked about are completely vapor. But probably the thing that, at least, other people that I've talked to about this, probably the thing about the metaverse as Meta proposes it, that rubs people the wrong way, is that this version of a metaverse, at least in popular culture, comes hand in hand with a dystopia. It is either an escape from a dystopia or is a result of a dystopia, and is actually the very weapon that's being used against humanity in all of these different pop culture features. So I think a lot of people probably hang on to that. They've got that notion of wait a minute, the Matrix, we were all batteries in the Matrix. That's not good. So there's that sort of stigma. It's so bad. The perception of this is so bad that Meta's promotion of this metaverse is almost driving it backwards in terms of public acceptance and public optimism, especially when there's so many different alternatives. So one of the things that is really stunning about what Meta is trying to promote in terms of their metaverse is what exactly is it going to take to get this thing. This is another frame from the keynote where you've got these two people. One of them is there holographically, so the only person that's actually in this room is probably the guy in the denim shirt, and they're collaborating over a holographic floor plan. They don't tell us a whole lot about the devices that are being used, but you could tell from the video that they're about the size and shape of regular eyeglasses. And they even mentioned that this is something that they want people to be able to do all day long, right? So these headsets are going to be worn all day, and it's how you're going to interact with everything. It'll be your computer, it'll be your workspace, it'll be your meeting room, it'll be your gaming table, it'll be your gym, it'll be your dance classes, it'll be everything is what their vision of the future is going to look like. This relies on a lot of technologies that haven't even been invented yet. The processing power, the battery life to wear something like this all day, the AI that would be needed to handle the hand tracking and the hand recognition, not to mention the optics that would take something no more obtrusive than a pair of eyeglasses and be able to do all this with. These are all things that the technology, it's been conceived of, but it doesn't exist yet. So it's almost a sci-fi-esque sophistication that's going to be required of these types of devices. And then we haven't even started talking about the ethical considerations, because a device like this, it's going to be able to walk into a space and locate itself within that space, and maybe locate that space geographically on the planet. That sort of awareness is going to be capturing a lot of information about the environment that it's in. So, okay, so what are the considerations if somebody wears one of these, say, into a museum or a private library? There's all sorts of privacy and intellectual property issues that are going to come out from everybody wearing a device that is going to be intimately aware of its environment and what's going on in the environment. One of the alternatives for the metaverse is Microsoft Mesh. They haven't been making as much noise about this because they're just sort of quietly doing it. But Microsoft Mesh, and I didn't mention earlier that AltSpace is a Microsoft product. It started off as an independent app, but in 2018 they were acquired by Microsoft, and very quietly and incrementally Microsoft has been sort of absorbing AltSpace into some of its other products. So if you may have heard of Teams avatars and Teams workspaces that are going to be coming out next year. So it'll be Microsoft Teams, except if I don't want to show on camera, I can have a cartoony avatar of me that moves when I move, and the eyes look around, and the voice moves when I talk. And it looks very cute. These avatars are going to be compatible with AltSpace. So I can have an avatar that represents myself in a regular Teams meeting, and then we can turn around and we can go into a virtual Teams workspace and collaborate on something. And then while we're here, that same avatar can be working with somebody who's wearing a HoloLens, working with somebody who's just in a web browser, and we're going to be going to an AltSpace event next year. Microsoft is also coming out with AltSpace Enterprise, which will allow private groups to sort of build their own mini AltSpace that has all of the same features, functionality, and content creation support, but it's just ours. And the rules and the limitations and the access is defined by us. And these things are just, you know, if Microsoft keeps up with the plan that they seem to have so far, these features are just going to start rolling out into our Microsoft apps and operating systems probably within a year or two. So I would see stuff like this, with this kind of interaction, happening sooner than the Meta's version of the metaverse. And then the one that I'm really excited about from a developer standpoint, Niantic has released what they're calling their Lightship Augmented Reality Development Kit, ARDK. Now, Niantic, if you haven't heard of Niantic, they did the Pokemon Go games. They also did the Ingress games. They've got a Harry Potter game. All of these games are augmented reality, but they're built on top of Google Maps. So your play space is literally the entire planet. You can go to a specific place to find a specific thing, and anybody else that goes there is going to be able to see that same thing. So everybody that's in these apps, they share this experience on a global scale. And now Niantic has released their development kit so that anybody that wants to can get this. Anybody that wants to and anybody that knows app development and Unity can get this, and they can build their own global map-based app. It makes collaboration in an augmented reality sense a lot simpler, because it's easier for me to build an experience that not only multiple people can share, but also can overlap into a virtual reality event. And I can design things that you actually have to go out and you have to go to a specific spot on the planet in order to see this thing or engage with this activity. We did something like this last year, working with Dr. Scott Miller from the music department. He created a sonic augmented reality app so that if you walk around on different parts of campus or different parts of the city, you hear a musical performance, and it's based in the actual location, what parts of the music you hear at any particular time. So your experience of that musical performance is going to depend on your route through campus. Well, that would have been a whole lot easier to build on something like this, because it's got that sort of geographical geolocation feature built right into the development kit. It makes it very straightforward to develop, say, a scavenger hunt for your campus or a self-guided campus tour. Now become dramatically easier to generate. And for many people, augmented reality is a preferable technology because it's more approachable, and everybody's already got a phone and you don't have to strap it to your face. And it's sort of the way we're expecting a lot of things to be done these days. So it's accepted, it's approachable, and it's getting easier to use. And the nature of this shared global framework makes this, I believe, closer to a metaverse than what Meta is trying to promote. And this sort of gets me to my own sort of manifesto about what a metaverse should be, right? None of these by themselves are going to be a metaverse, right? Because a metaverse would be a universe above the universes. It would be a collection of universes. And not only would it be this collection of universes, you would have to have the interface to move between them. So we're going to have to get on from this Wild West that we're currently in now. There's no interoperability between these different platforms. And that's something that will eventually change. Somebody will come up with a standard. Somebody will come up with a way of translating from one platform to another, right? And that's when we'll really be we'll be capable of a true metaverse, of being able to shift from one of these universes into another one. And it's not going to be any one company that does it. We're going to do it. The people are going to build it, and the people are going to own it. I believe that's the way it should be, right? And currency's okay. Currency's fine, right? Public, being able to buy and sell goods, that's fine too. But in a real metaverse that's not going to be based on some sort of dystopian alternative future, citizens of the new metaverse, their value would be determined by the contribution to the whole, not necessarily how much virtual real estate they own. And anybody should be able to get into it. It shouldn't be restricted to this device by this company to get access to this software. It should all be open and accessible to everybody. So when is XR going to have its iPhone moment? Everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people talk about the iPhone moment. You can go back and you can almost pick the day in 2008 when the iPhone changed the way smartphones and communication devices as in large changed almost overnight. And why hasn't that happened yet for for virtual reality. Well, you know, I blame a lot of it on that nerd smell. It's just going to have to come up with a form factor that's comfortable, that's accessible, and intuitive in order for it to become more used by people. Productivity is going to have to, and not just regular productivity, right? We're going to have to find a way to become more productive in a way that we don't currently anticipate. It's going to have to make us more productive in a way that we currently just don't conceive. We've got a couple of examples here. The Vario VR desktop is designed to be used with Vario extended reality headsets. Top of the line. We're talking a $6,000 headset. You probably need a $10,000 computer to drive it, but its capabilities are out of the world. It was designed in collaboration with Audi to design their cars. So these headsets are being used by high-end businesses for high-end design. The benefits that they see from using these devices at that scale is something that's going to have to be translated down to your average person before we really see any kind of revolutionary takeoff with the technology. And then once again, there's going to have to be some technologies that just don't exist yet. Hand tracking is something that, you know, the Quest is trying to support, but the AI and the AI needed to interpret hand signals it just isn't there yet. It's coming along, but it's going to take some time. So there's some things that are coming that really could make a big impact in that productivity. I, for one, really appreciate not having to use monitors when I'm doing work. I can work in a VR headset and I can work in any environment that I want, and I'm not restricted by the size or the resolutions of my physical monitors. I can have as many monitors as I want, they can be as big as I want, and I can put them anywhere. And that's a really nice development experience. I'm not sure how well that translates into, say, a data entry job or any kind of office management. Those sorts of things are going to have to come up with some sort of application before it really takes off. So the good news, if you did recently buy a Quest 2, you haven't wasted your money. September, October, I was telling people to hold off because there was rumors of a Quest 3. It never happened. So if you did buy a Quest 2, you probably have the best consumer level, entry level VR device that you can get currently. It seems like every week I hear about somebody else, some startup or somebody on Kickstarter coming out with a Quest killer or Quest competitor, but it hasn't shown up yet. There are some headsets that you can get that you know, you don't have to log in with your Facebook account. You don't have to have a lot of the things that make the Quest undesirable. But those devices, like the new HTC Vive Pro 3, is very expensive. I could buy 3 Quests for what it costs to buy a headset that doesn't require a Facebook account that does the same thing. And I want to reiterate that if you've got a reasonably new smartphone, you've got everything that you need to get into augmented reality. It's already right there. So augmented reality is a great platform for people who don't want to invest a lot of time and money, still want to be able to dabble in something new and expose your students to something new and innovative. Augmented reality could be the way to go. But probably the best single piece of advice, if you're interested in getting into virtual reality, you're not sure where to turn to or what questions to ask. Educators in VR, it's an awesome group to be a part of. I've found collaborating with them to be both rewarding and enriching. Just a wonderful group of people to be a part of. And then I think we're going to make these slides available. So I have a list of links here. If you want to see my resources and the where I've been getting my information from, they'll be listed here. And that represents the end of my prepared comments.
Well, that's fantastic. I really appreciate that, Mark. I have a couple questions, but I wanted to see if the audience has any first. So let me go ahead and check there. Looks like Lane has a question.
Unmuting. Thank you very much. That was really informative. I'm a professor at Clemson and beginning to dabble in developing. I have a quest. What are some resources, maybe if you could run down, for creating content? I realize that's an issue, and I don't want to start with a blank world and start drawing from white. Are there any like canned environments that I could start playing in, and tools? What does that space look like?
Well, okay, so there's lots of different applications that allow you to create content. Probably the two most common that I've at least around here, Tilt Brush and Gravity Sketch. Gravity Sketch gives you a lot more control over the design, and both of these allow you to use the XR environment to sculpt or paint or design in the case of Gravity Sketch, and then you can export those out and send them into other applications. So a lot of times we'll see where somebody may take an art class, show them how to use Gravity Sketch or Tilt Brush, then we'll export their work out of those applications and bring them over into an alt space world where we can all get in there and see them together. And it doesn't have to be alt space. It could be any social media platform. These content created in packages like this go up very well on Sketchfab or Mozilla Hubs. There's lots of different ways that you can share that once you get that created. But those are two applications that I know are tremendously popular for people that want to create things in VR.
All right, and someone in the chat mentioned Zoe.com. Not familiar with that. Are you, Mark?
I am not familiar with that. I will have to Mina, Zoe.com.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off that question, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about like the design process. Do you work with students to build some of these simulations? Do they do all the art, or do they go out and download these assets? Or can you talk a little bit more about that?
So yeah, we do primarily focus on students who are the students could come from typically they come from our software engineering computer science program, or they come from our art department. And we really find that there's a lot of overlap between those two. It's amazing how many students could not decide between art and engineering and picked one or the other, but they were both drawn to both of them. So we do see an overlap of talent between our art students and our engineering students. But they'll work on either the software development, depending on the nature of the program, or they'll work on the content creation, which lately creating 3D models, creating assets, creating textures, creating graphics has been the lion's share of the development effort. It seems like for every person that we have working on the software, we need 3 or 4 working on models, animations, different types of graphics. We involve the students as much as possible with the subject matter experts. So we'll have students who actually interview the stakeholders, find out the requirements, and that sort of soft skill of translating somebody else's needs and requirements into a workable project is something that we try to integrate into everything that we do, especially when it comes to involving the students. Now, that being said, we have some gaps in our skills. So there's, sometimes a project comes along that requires a particular type, say character animation is something that we don't have a strong handle on here. We can do lots of different types of scientific and engineering animation, but making a character get up and walk across a room is something that we really don't have a whole lot of capabilities towards. So that being said, we include our students in our design process and the development process as much as possible. A lot of that depends on the nature of the project too. We've got one where we have a team of students every year that sort of take ownership of the software, and they develop it year after year after year as part of their capstone project. Other students just work with us in a paid capacity. We also provide internships too. So there's lots of different ways that students can actually interface with the lab. That being said, we get our best results from students that we pay. Sorry about rambling on about that for a little bit.
No, that's a great answer. I kind of fall in the same boat where I couldn't decide between art and computer science, so I chose both.
Yeah.
So another question I had, do you have any future projects that you're working on right now that you can talk to us about?
So the biggest project that we have going on outside of the mate ROV competition and the NCAT support that we're doing, we're developing our own social VR platform that we're calling Connect VR. And this is one of those things that I was talking about, where we have a different team of capstone students every year pick it up and try to develop it forward. The impetus behind Connect VR is to fill the gaps that we're experiencing in other social VR platforms, such as AltSpace. I can put together a class, I can put together an event, I can have a group of people come together, and I can tell you everything you want to know about something, say like welding, right? I can tell you everything about welding. I can't teach you to weld, right? So those sorts of skills and task-based skills that's a void currently in social virtual reality. So Connect VR is sort of our attempt to fill those gaps. It can lay out a series of tasks, and it can assess how well you accomplish those tasks. And we've got a variety of different metrics, sort of based on like accuracy or speed, efficiency. How long does it take you to do this? And also because it's an immersive VR environment, we can measure things that you might not be able to measure in a real world environment, such as how long you spend looking at something, which can be an indicator of a lot of different things depending on what you're looking at.
It looks like Lane has another question.
Yeah, sorry about that. You made me think about something. So what if I'm teaching something about a manufacturing plant, and I want to take the students into the manufacturing plant? Are there tools for bringing in real environments into the XR world? Like I know this company Nexus is doing LiDAR scans, and then they'll skin photographs on top of it. But I've got a little Insta360 camera that I can carry around on a string and go walking through and take some video. Are there easy ways or tools that are made for bringing that stuff in?
Camera is probably the easiest way that you've got available to you. And it's becoming easier and easier to capture these environments in almost a realistic sort of way. I was talking about these devices earlier are going to be able to 3D scan. They're going to have to be able to 3D scan their environment. So the image capture or the environment capture capabilities are only going to increase. Now, if we were having this conversation in 2017, that's all we'd be talking about would be 360 video. Whether or not you're trying to do your 360 videos in stereo or not, and then what player are you going to use. But 360 video is really sort of now it's more of a supplement. It's kind of fallen to the side in the as an actual means, right? So you may have a 3D environment where you have computer generated virtual objects, and then you surround that by a 360 video to give it another layer of realism. But there are ways that you can capture an environment and bring it into a virtual environment such as AltSpace or some sort of shared environment. It all depends on if I want to be able, what kind of interaction do I want to have with the environment. If I just want to stand and look around, then 360 video is probably still the best way to do, because it's quick, it's easy to share. It doesn't take a whole lot of technical processing. But if I want to be able to, say, walk up to a piece of machinery and interact with that piece of machinery in a virtual environment, well, then you're talking about another level of modeling. You're talking about another level of access. And the tools to generate that and capture that and share that are not quite ready for prime time, but they're getting there.
All right, so it looks like we're coming up on the hour. Does anyone have any quick questions to ask Mark? All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for this very interesting talk, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, it's been great working with you in the past, Jeff. I'm looking forward to more in the future. Thanks for having me. I feel like I've done like a shotgun thing, because it's just like, well, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and each one of these little points could probably talk about for a while. But thanks so much. This was a lot of fun.
All right, thanks. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.